the slight dip in prices, California drivers still facing really high prices in order to fill up our tanks. California leaders have said they're working to provide relief, but what are they doing? Why is it taking so long?
Good question. Here to weigh in on the matter is KUSI contributor, AM 760 radio host Mark Larson. We had a 35-day of everyday increases totaling $1.27 a gallon. And then we had a 10-day decrease of 16 cents.
Wow.
And maybe 18. Wow. Depends on how you... So we're supposed to say, hey, that's great, and we'll kind of settle into this and get used to it. I heard you earlier on the tease, Jenny, say the new normal, and I think we've done that before. It's not in theory. Many times, I remember not too many years ago, we said, if this gets above $3 a gallon, that's it. It goes to $4, and then it settles back to about $3.10. And you say, well, that's a lot better. Then same thing at $4, now at $5. So we're rejoicing that we're, what, $5.89, $5, whatever, in some places. Give it some time. There's a lot of different factors. Yeah, there's more oil on the market, and there's some from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That can be debated as to why we're doing that now. It's not exactly like national crisis cut off by OPEC or what have you. But meanwhile, the legislature and Governor Newsom are on vacation, so this is not really job one for anybody. When they do things in Sacramento, the majority, the Democrats in charge of the Assembly and State Senate, and politically, they make Newsom look Reagan-esque sometimes. They're so much farther up. But when they get a hold of something, like you remember our friend Kevin Kiley, the Assembly member, had a proposal, just give immediate relief, get rid of the 51 cents, the gas tax. And they said, well, okay, but let's do a couple of things. And this, they always say, it's the way we do business. So the majority said, let's get rid of that, but then let's tax the oil companies more. So then the Republicans had to shut down that bill, and then the Democrats said, Republicans don't want relief for you at the pump. No, you don't overly tax, well, except in Sacramento, this is what they think of, that if you want to get the oil producers, that you're pressing them to produce more, environmentally sensitive, but we're going to tax you at the same time. It doesn't make sense, except there. So, I'm okay with the legislature being off on spring break with their Speedos at wherever they go. Think about that until the 18th, because they can't do more damage. So let's look at all the different...
For some reason, I keep thinking of, we're covering that story in MESA with the bike lanes, or the two-way lanes, and there was such an uproar that there was a change. The leaders there said, okay, we'll change it. Is there anything that we can do to push a change like this?
Well, there's an election coming up, June the first week of June.
Which brings us to $400 a car.
Yes, of course. Everybody's just like, hey, we're going to help you every way. And the only way that they like to do things, job one in Sacramento, again, the majority in charge, is let's give you something free the closer we get to elections. Newsom did a lot of that before the recall. It worked. It tends to work. And at the same time now, with the election, the biggie, the midterms coming up in the fall, there will be a lot of talk about that. And nothing's really changed. And there have been other proposals. I think Tony Atkins from San Diego was proposing maybe it's a $200 deal with some other caveats. And initially, Newsom said, let's take $9 billion, because, we have several billions of dollars that they could just give back to taxpayers, like a big chunk, which would buy a lot of gas. And he said, let's do that at $400 per car, the two-car formula, and even if you have an electric car, we'll give you a check too. And then they got into, well, who really deserves it? So then they get into what's called means testing. If you make too much money, whatever they decree, it just gets more convoluted the more they touch it. So nothing's really changed in that. Newsom decreed it. The legislature has to approve it because it involves spending. That's the appropriating. And then he goes wherever he's going. We don't know where he is. He's in Central America or South America doing a fact-finding tour, something.
Whatever.
So
we hear a term a lot, and I think a lot of people would appreciate an explainer. It's cap and trade. For those who don't know, what is it and how does it come into play specifically?
Let's say you run some kind of a plant, a factory in California, and it doesn't meet the very, very tough standards on air quality or whatever. Maybe you spew too much of one particular thing into the air, and you're a clean coal plant or what have you. And there are many of those left here. And they'll say, well, you're missing the standard here, but we will allow you to keep doing that, because it's not really that much pollution, but you've got to give us, it's like the mob going in and saying, well, you've got to give us a little bit of money. It's just business. You're from Chicago, you know how that works. I grew up back there too. It's just business. That's all it is.
Dad, is that you?
You pay us a little bit. Oh, I have one of those too. Yeah. So, and then they keep doing it, but they'll say, well, It happens all the time. Mitigation. You say, well, you can build that. It's a little too big, but if you give us money, you can build a lagoon over here with some, fairy shrimp in it or what have you, or flying gnats and, the endangered gnats. So you pay them off, and then the money. So that's why it's often called cap and tax. Okay. The trade part is, doing the deal. And it's all done in the guise of, we're going to make the environment better in California. And there are some good pluses in it, depending on but it's gotten out of hand, like everything else, over time. So they keep tightening it and making more restrictions. And now, we heard from our local power company that we're getting, I think, $61 and change. Yeah. The first of a few installments. It's our cut on the deal coming back from the enormous fund. So, wow. And that's what drives a lot of the gas prices, because they don't want to touch politically the fact that they had a pretty ugly battle, even among fellow Democrats in the majority back in 2017 to get that enacted and get that gas tax enacted. So they don't want to go back and start over. That's why they come up with, well, let's just give you a $400 check. Maybe it's $600. Maybe you don't do your car's too fancy, so we won't do that either.
Wow.
And if you walk to work, you should get a check too, because your food is more expensive because of the supply chain, and they use gas.
And you're a voter.
And especially because you're a
registered voter.
It's all about fairness.
Yes, sure.
And then when you want to, just go out and paint, mystery bike lanes in the middle of nowhere, and, confound people. And by the way, those will come back.
It's distracting us from the topics at hand.
Those will come back. I guarantee you. And Mayor Gloria, on that issue, quickly, because it's all related to the climate restrictions and fuel. So, he said, listen, we're going to now, in the future, we're going to stop doing this right now. But in the future, when we do more of this, we're going to come and talk to the neighborhood. And the way that normally works is we'll hear you, and then we'll do what we're going to do anyway. Case in point, over on 30th Street, where they took 400 cars out of there. Chris Ward was then the city council member, and the locals said, I don't feel safe. He actually told, remember the hidden camera? He told a younger woman that, well, she says, I feel unsafe having to walk over. He says, well, why don't you just move to a different neighborhood? Wow. That's not exactly, and by the way, that wasn't during an election year.
Yeah, very good point.
And election year, everybody cared.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Mark.
Well, I don't expect when they come back to work in Sacramento on the 18th that they jump on gas right away. They've got other distractions.
Sure. All right.
Plus, they got to show their vacation videos.
Spring break. All right. Mark Larson, you hear him on AM 760, Monday through Friday, 10 to noon. Appreciate your time and analysis. Great to be here bright
and early.
Thanks,
Mark. Well, what's great?
I've thrown my dog off. Izzy now just like, what are we doing this early?
It's too early for your dog? That's when you know it's too early.
What's funny is you think and you go, man, Mark gets up early on a Sunday morning, gets on a coat and tie, a suit and tie.
No pants.
He's on his way to church.
Yeah,
so this is just
I will tell you, I don't know.
I don't think I'm
making
that today.
That's why I'm not looking over.
I go to the airport. I can't fly today anyway because it's too gunky out there.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
All right. See you.